The room went silent as the new teacher steadied herself, blood on her knuckles from the torn fabric of her shirt. A thin red line traced down her hand, dripping softly onto the classroom floor. 30 students stared, frozen in shock. Just moments earlier, laughter had filled the room as the bullies celebrated their cruel stunt. Now not a single breath seemed to move. Slowly, she straightened her back. Her chest rose and fell once, calm and controlled. There was no anger in her eyes, only an unshakable steadiness that felt heavier than any shout. She reached into her torn pocket and pulled out a small, worn badge attached to a faded blue ribbon. The metal caught the fluorescent light. She lifted it high. The front row smiles vanished instantly. The nearest bully blinked hard, as if his brain refused to process what he was seeing. Engraved across the badge were the words, National Boxing Champion, along with her name and the year she had won. A few students gasped quietly. One boy's jaw dropped. Another leaned back as if the air had suddenly been knocked from his lungs. The teacher's voice was calm when she finally spoke. "Before I became an educator," she said, "I learned how to fight, not for trophies, not for fame. But to survive?" She glanced at her bleeding hand without emotion. "Today I chose not to fight back. That was also a lesson." The bullies shifted nervously. The same students who had boldly ripped her shirt now couldn't even meet her eyes. One of them clenched his fists under the desk, trembling, not with confidence but with fear. The classroom that once felt loud and reckless now felt like a courtroom waiting for judgment. She took a step forward. Her shoes clicked softly against the floor, yet the sound echoed like thunder. "Strength," she continued, "is not in your fists. It's in your restraint." Her eyes locked on the main bully. "And respect is something you either learn the easy way or the hard way." The door suddenly swung open. The principal stood there, staring at the scene in disbelief. The torn shirt, the blood, the terrified students. A pair of security guards followed close behind. Silence shattered into chaos as whispers spread across the room. The bullies turned pale. Phones that had been recording slipped nervously into pockets. Eyes dropped to desks. For the first time, they understood. This wasn't just a prank on another weak teacher. This was a moment that would follow them for the rest of their lives. And the new teacher? She simply lowered her badge, wiped the blood from her knuckles, and stood tall unbroken. The principal rushed in with security as whispers spread like fire through the classroom and into the hallway. The sharp click of polished shoes echoed against the floor as 2 uniformed guards stepped in behind him. Their presence alone shifted the atmosphere from chaos to dread. Students who had been frozen in shock now straightened stiffly in their seats, eyes darting between the torn-shirted teacher and the authority figures at the door. Phones dropped. Some slipped from nervous hands onto desks with quiet taps. Others were quickly shoved into pockets too late to hide the truth. The red recording lights that had once captured laughter and mockery had already done their damage. The evidence was sealed. The boys who had laughed minutes earlier were unrecognizable now. Their faces were drained of color, skin pale and tight. The bold smirks that once ruled their expressions had vanished, replaced with wide, fearful stares. One of them swallowed hard, his throat bobbing as he tried to speak, but no sound came out. Another slowly sank back into his chair, as if his legs could no longer carry the weight of what he'd done. They had thought it was harmless fun. They had thought she was weak. Now they realized every second of their cruelty and every second of her calm restraint had been captured. The principal's eyes moved from the blood on her knuckles to the torn fabric of her shirt, then to the terrified students. His jaw tightened. Years in education had shown him many kinds of misbehavior, but this was different. This was deliberate, calculated, cruel. "Who did this?" he demanded quietly. No one answered. The silence was heavier than any confession. The main bully's fingers twitched on his desk. Sweat dotted his forehead. He could feel his entire world closing in. Parents, suspensions, possibly charges. The laughter that once made him feel powerful now echoed in his ears like a punishment. The teacher stood perfectly still. She did not point, she did not accuse. Her calm was more powerful than any shout. The blood had dried on her skin, but she made no effort to hide it. It was the truth, plain and undeniable. One student in the back whispered, They recorded everything. That was the breaking point. The principal turned sharply to the security guards. Collect every phone, now. Chairs scraped as students obeyed instantly. Some cried quietly. Others stared at their hands in disbelief, realizing how fast everything had changed. What began as a cruel joke had turned into evidence of a crime. The bullies' shoulders slumped. For the first time in their lives, they understood that power didn't belong to the loudest voice or the strongest shove. It belonged to those who stood firm when they could have struck back and chose not to. And in that moment, fear replaced cruelty. By lunchtime, they stood shaking in her classroom, lined up beside one another like nervous shadows. The same boys who once thrived on laughter and cruelty now couldn't even lift their heads. Their hands trembled at their sides, their throats felt tight. Every step they had taken down the hallway toward her room felt heavier than the last. The teacher stood at the front, hands clasped calmly, her torn shirt now neatly pinned, bandage wrapped around her knuckles. The room was empty of students, silent except for the faint hum of the lights. This was no public punishment. This was something deeper. One of them tried to speak first. I'm sorry, his voice cracked. The words fell apart before they reached her. Another followed, then another. Their apologies overlapped, messy and desperate. We didn't mean it. It was a joke. Please don't ruin our lives. Some wiped tears angrily from their eyes. Others cried without shame. She let them speak. She let every excuse spill out until the room finally fell quiet again. Then she spoke. I hear your words, she said gently, but words aren't the same as change. They looked up slowly. You will serve this school, she continued. Every afternoon for 3 months, cleaning hallways, helping younger students, doing work no one claps for. Their eyes widened. And you will treat every person in this building with respect, especially those you think are weaker than you. One boy nodded rapidly, tears streaming. We will. We swear. She studied each face carefully. No anger, no hatred. Only resolve. Then I choose forgiveness, she said. The word landed softly yet heavily. Relief flooded their bodies so fast that some of them nearly collapsed. One fell to his knees, sobbing into his hands. Another whispered, thank you, so quietly it was almost a breath, but her voice firmed one last time. Forgiveness does not erase memory. The lesson will follow you as long as you live. They listened, they understood. The lunch bell rang suddenly, loud and sharp, echoing through the hallways like a final judgment. The sound jolted them, but it also freed them. One by one, they turned and walked toward the door, not laughing, not joking, but changed. At the door, the main bully stopped. He turned back, his eyes met hers. You didn't have to forgive us? She nodded once. No, she said. But I chose to. He walked out silently. The door closed. And in that quiet classroom, the lesson was sealed forever.